Hey everybody, today we're going to be talking about my eczema journey and my update with it. The last time I made a video about this, I think I was just having it on my hands and little bits here and there, and it was very, very annoying, as anybody with eczema would understand, having to watch what you touch so much. I got to a point where I really had to wear a lot of gloves. And for the sake of this video, I'm not going to be putting up what that looked like, just because for me it's hard to kind of look at where I was a while ago. So backstory, about a month or so ago in March, I had one of the worst eczema flares in my whole entire life. And I'm talking not just my hands, it started kind of creeping up all over my body. Starting around December was when I noticed the small eczemas kind of popping up here and there, like on my leg, maybe on the back of my leg, all along my arms. I mean, you could see a little bit of the scarring here or healing stuff here, just like little patches. And all of these eczemas right here were also kind of creeping up my back, a little bit on my chest, on my stomach, like everywhere. And I pole dance for fun, so part of me thought maybe it's just like an irritation with the tacky sticky glue that I'm using, or just any other irritations, because I did go to an allergist a couple times over the past like 5 years, and they were doing blood work, they were doing skin tests, skin pricks, and they were saying, okay, it looks like you do have allergies to so many items, a lot of food allergies, a lot of environmental allergies, and I can get into that a little bit later on. But essentially I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that I'm being exposed to, right? Like my roommate that I have right now has a cat, and apparently I'm allergic to cats. So there were just so many of these variables, the changing of the weather, changing of the seasons, that would always make me think, okay, that has to be the reason. That has to be the reason. I can mitigate it. I can manage this on my own without having to go to the doctor for more steroids. Because at that point, again, anybody with eczema knows that even though you go to a dermatologist or your regular doctor and you say, hey, I'm having an eczema flare, the first thing that they'll do is say, okay, here's some steroid creams. I have had so many experiences with triamcinolone ever since I was a kid, and thankfully I was doing my own research, and as a kid they would always tell me like you can only use this for 2 weeks top, so I, knock on wood, never developed any TSW or topical steroid withdrawal. I always knew to just keep it within 2 weeks. But even with that knowledge, over the past 6 months or so, it was still crawling all over my body when I was only used to having it around my hands. And then around, I guess, April, May time, I noticed that it started kind of like creeping up to my neck. Also, you can kind of see a little bit of the scarring, maybe a little discoloration. I don't have any foundation on whatsoever. I have nothing, like the only thing I have is CeraVe on my lips. So this is my skin today. But it was crawling up my neck, and I was getting red patches, red blotches, like all over my face. And of course it was itchy. I even started getting it on the back of my neck, just slowly creeping up. And again, at this time, I kept thinking like, oh, there's so many things that are setting off my body to react this way. It must be something I ate. You know, according to these allergist tests, I was allergic to gluten, to soy, to tomatoes, to so many other things, like so many things. But the second allergist that I saw pretty much said you can't keep avoiding all of these foods, because it was like tuna, pork, beef, rice at one point, which I've been eating my whole entire life. And her explanation with it was because eczema is a very specific problem that, yes, allergies can exacerbate it, but it's not the primary cause for most of people for eczema flares. So although it is okay to get allergy tested and everything like that, it's kind of a sticky ground where allergists and dermatologists kind of clash, where some allergists will say, oh, you just need to cut this out and you're good. And some dermatologists will say, even if you cut that out, you're still going to be flaring up. But again, everybody's body is different. And I can go over that in another video if that's something that's interesting to you. But started crawling all the way up. And mind you, there were some stressful events, a lot of stressful events that have happened in these past 6 months. So I know that that held a lot of the reason behind these flares. But again, no matter how much I was trying to mitigate that, to tamp it down, to avoid allergies, to avoid stressors, it was still crawling all the way up on my face until finally in May, around May 20th, I woke up and my eyes were swollen, like swollen, and my face was so dry and just, it wasn't that itchy, but it was definitely eczema all over my face. I freaked out, and of course, like, I took a Benadryl because I'm like, why are my eyes swelling? This is actually insane. And went up to my parents' house, and my mom's a nurse, so I was kind of waiting for her to come home because I felt like I was okay with my breathing, you know, even though I was having some anxiety about it. I was like taking deep breaths. I knew that I could still breathe properly. I could still eat all the foods. Like, a lot of things that were worrying me were psychological, and also looking in the mirror. Like, looking in the mirror would make me freak out because it's just hard. Sorry. It's just hard to look at yourself, and it's heartbreaking. And it does a number on you mentally. Not to mention, it already does a number on you physically. So I was just kind of toiling in my own self, being like, okay, it's gonna right itself. It's gonna be okay. But then eventually my mom came home and she was like, you need to go to the emergency room. We've never seen you flare this bad, especially on your face and around your neck. So my neck also had eczema, and maybe like some swelling, but it was just swelling of the skin. Again, I could breathe properly, but she was like, you need to go to the emergency doctor. This is crazy. So my sister and I went. Long story short, the emergency doctor told me that it's eczema. Like, he was like, yeah, this is eczema. And he told me, he was like, it's not that bad. And I remember thinking, like, that, one, relieving me, but also irritating me, because I've heard that my whole entire life. Every time I went to a dermatologist or a doctor saying, hey, this is what's going on, it's very uncomfortable for me. And they would always throw in like, okay, well, it's not that bad compared to what I've seen, right? Like, and of course, I'm talking to an emergency doctor. This guy's gonna be like, I've seen it all. Like, this is nothing. So he essentially told me, you need to schedule an appointment with your dermatologist and maybe even your allergist too, of course, your primary care doctor, to figure out what's going on here. But for now, in order to calm it down, I'm gonna give you some steroids. And me thinking steroids, I was thinking like steroid creams. He did say he was gonna give it to me orally and also an injection. And at that point, I was very kind of scared about what was gonna happen to me if I had no medication whatsoever. And it was the first time it happened, and I was just like, just get it, figure it out, find a way to just like dissolve it. And yeah, so he gave me prednisone, 10 milligrams, I think, told me to take it for like 10 days. And prednisone, if you don't know, is a steroid. After doing some research after I took it, is one of the steroids that are kind of controversial to give to eczema patients, just because there is a potential side effect of it flaring, your eczema flaring back and potentially coming back worse. So let me explain what prednisone is in my terms, right? I'm no doctor, but of course it's a steroid. So what it does is basically suppress your immune system so that it's not constantly sending out inflammation receptors, molecules, whatever the term is for it. Your immune system is no longer constantly trying to inflame those areas that detect threats. So taking the prednisone suppressed my immune system, and I was eczema free for like 6 days, and I had never been that eczema free in my whole entire life. Like, from what I could remember, I always had some kind of patch going on, but like, it worked so well during that time that I really realized how much of a mental toll it takes on your mind and of course your body, but just like I realized that I had food anxiety, that I had even like environmental anxieties. I would walk out of the house being like, okay, make sure you don't touch certain things because it was on my hands, or don't forget your gloves. Make sure when you go to restaurants, like make sure that it's not no tomatoes in it, no gluten, no soy, and soy is in everything. And of course I try cooking my own meals at home, but sometimes you need to eat out, right? Like, so anyways, it was glorious living 6 days with no eczema, no worries, everything cleared up. Like my skin was so soft, so smooth. There was no mark, no nothing. And I felt really beautiful. Prednisone had done that for me, and I was on cloud 9. And then of course, my main worry once those 10 days of taking prednisone was up, my main worry was that it was going to come back. And of course it came back, and it came back ferociously. It came back definitely worse than the first time that I took it. Now, on top of him prescribing prednisone, he also gave me a shot of something. I forgot what it's called. I want to call it, it's like Dex something. It was another steroid shot that he gave in my arm, or one of the nurses gave. And that was the most painful shot that I've ever got, because for some reason I was like, oh, they're going to do some blood work. Like when the nurse came with all this stuff, I just immediately, when I see needles, I just look the other way. So she was pulling out the needles, and I was like, yeah, just do whatever you need to do. Stabs me with this needle, and my sister's watching me, and we're sitting in the emergency room, and I just like tense up and just start cursing. Like I'm straight up like, oh shit, like, oh my God, trying to keep it in, but like literally having no other place to escape. It felt like fire in my arm for a second, and I felt like I couldn't move it. My sister had to massage it, and according to her, my sister, she said that the emergency room was like turning to me in horror, because they didn't do this in like a separate room. They did it in the waiting room where everybody was. So imagine me just being like, oh fuck, and all these other people are just like, is she good? Like, is that what I have to do? Prednisone, that shot, they gave me a Benadryl, which I had already taken earlier that day, but they're like, just take it just in case. It's an antihistamine. And a Pepsin, which is another type of antihistamine, helps with the itching. That was the emergency room day. Prednisone timeline, it cleared up as soon as I was off prednisone, came right back. During that time, within the 10 days, I was able to schedule a primary care visit and to get the referrals for allergists and dermatologists. And then I was able to see my allergist pretty soon after I was off prednisone. And she was the nurse practitioner, but I trusted her way more than the allergist, just because I didn't have a good relationship with that allergist. And this is just a whole other story, but it is so hard trying to get an appointment quickly when an emergency like this happens. You know, people are booked out. My dermatologist that was the closest to me that I had history with was booked out until August, and mind you, it was May, and I needed to get it seen ASAP. So I had my primary care people pretty much book me. It doesn't matter how far it was. I was like, I need to see a dermatologist, and I want to ask about Dupixent. Dupixent is, if you don't know, another not quite immune suppressor, but an immune blocker. It's not an immune suppressant, but it blocks certain receptors in your immune system. I believe it's like interleukin 4 and interleukin 13, and those are the two molecules, for lack of a better word, that inflame your body for eczema, that, you know, you start having those big rashes and inflammations. Was able to see my allergist, and my allergist put me on more antihistamines. I truly felt like none of them worked, because I was already taking a daily Zyrtec. My allergist before that was saying you need to take a Zyrtec, and then you also need to take an Allegra, and, you know, carry around a Benadryl just in case. So it was like 3 antihistamines that I had on me at all times. And then she also prescribed these 2 other antihistamines. Like one was a generic Pepsin, and another one, I can't even remember what it was. And she was like, just keep taking these and it should help with the itch. It was just so much medicine being prescribed to me. And when I was taking it, I truly felt like nothing was happening. but I haven't been taking antihistamines recently, and the itch still is the same. Like it hasn't really changed that much. So after going to the allergist, they requested some blood work. When I went to go see my dermatologist, and when I walked in and sat in the chair, I remember him coming in, looking at my face, because I had my hood up, everything was covered, but as soon as he came in, I took it all off, and he just looked at me and he was like, that is a very severe case of eczema. And he pretty much cut straight to the point, and he was like, we want to try getting you on Dupixent. Let's try getting you on that as soon as possible. Your insurance is going to give us hell because they have to prescribe certain steroids, and basically they have to try every single option before they put you on Dupixent in order for your insurance to approve it. I told him I didn't want to go on steroids because of what happened when I was on prednisone. Like, I don't want to keep putting these steroids on my face, especially. Like, certain steroids are not supposed to be used on your face. And he was like, yeah, I understand, but I do need to prescribe this to you. You still have to pick it up. We're going to put in the paperwork for Dupixent. And thank goodness I went to this dermatologist, because he said that he has so many Dupixent samples in his back freezer or wherever they keep it for storage. And he was like, I could even give you a shot today, and you can just keep coming back every 2 weeks, and I can keep giving you the shot until Dupixent gets approved by your insurance. And I like broke down in tears, because the back of my head, I already knew that Dupixent was the way that I had to go, because it was like a month-long struggle of me trying to tame down the eczema on my own, and it was nothing was helping. And the turning point for me to really, really accept Dupixent was when I asked him, I said, so is there like a root cause for this? Is there a reason why my face was so messed up, right? Like, why is my eczema flaring, and why is it really on my face? Like literally all over my neck. Why? And he goes, you are also just genetically predisposed to flare up. Your body is programmed to inflame. And when he said that, and I was pretty much saying like, so you're saying there's nothing I can do on my own to get this to come down? And he said, well, I'm pretty sure you have tried all of that already. Based on what you have told me, it sounds like you were watching what you were eating. You were trying to make sure, no gluten, no soy, no tomato. You were taking your allergy pills. You were trying to avoid dust, which in reality, you can't avoid dust. It's literally everywhere. It's in the air that we breathe. I had moved back in with my parents for a little bit to not be in a cat environment, and it was still acting up really bad. I was trying meditations. I was trying everything to even calm down the stressors in my life. And he said, I know that you have been trying to do all of that already on your own, but look where we're at. You still have this insane flare that's going on, and this is something that, again, you are predisposed to. You are genetically predisposed and programmed to be inflamed. So this is something that isn't just within your control right now. And when he said that, like, it was a big like, I kind of knew it, but it was like a kind of shock. Also, just having like a professional say it to your face of like, no matter what you do, you're still here. And he was right. Like, I was doing everything possible to avoid it. And even me just being cooped up in a room and having an air purifier going all day and watching what I eat and everything, it was still where it's at. So once he said that, I was like, okay, give me the shot. Like, let's do it. So the first time you take Dupixent, you need 2 doses of it, which is essentially 2 shots. And I was expecting it to burn just as bad as that first steroid in the emergency room. But thankfully, honestly, it wasn't that bad. Like, I just turned the other way. He injected me into this arm, and he injected me into this arm. I asked beforehand what the side effects are, and he said Dupixent is the safest prescription that he gives out to patients. And he kept reiterating, he's like, I'm not sponsored or paid by Dupixent at all. Like, I genuinely believe this is the safest medication that I give to my patients, and I have seen a lot of great results for it. My sister was in the room asking questions as well of like, how is this going to affect her mental health? Because some medications can affect hormones and everything else. And he was like, I think her mental health is more affected by her having this flare, by having eczema that she always has to deal with. And he was looking at me like, correct me if I'm wrong, but how is it right now? And I was like, oh, it's bad. Like, my mental health is pretty bad. I can't look at myself in the mirror. I don't want to go out. I'm really insecure about how I look all the time. I don't even want to see my boyfriend sometimes because I just felt like so unattractive and so just like ugly. Like, I felt like freakish. So he was like, the side effects of Dupixent, in my professional opinion, are better than the side effects of having this type of level of eczema. And again, big shocker. I was like, damn, this guy's dropping bars. Like, this guy is telling some real cold hard truth that it gave me the confidence to be okay with taking the shot. Long story short, side effects were eyes. You could get certain eye inflammation, or for some like people, you can get eye problems. And I already had eczema on my eye. So when he was telling me these things, he was like, you have the potential of it being the same, but again, the same side effects of having it as eczema, or someone who doesn't have eczema, but a potential side effect of it. Swelling at the points of injection. I think that was mainly it. That's all he said. Another thing that he pointed out is like, the worst side effect of eczema on its own is having an inflammation, having open wounds, and potentially getting staph infection for it, or just having it get infected is worse than having the side effects of Dupixent. And I was like, this guy's really selling me on it. And he kept regurgitating, I am not sponsored by Dupixent, or I am not paid by Dupixent to say these things. I genuinely believe this to be true. You know, I was already there. I was already suffering. And so I was like, just inject me. Just let's do it. Let's do the first dose. So the first dose that you get is 2 shots to kind of like load up your body. But he gave it to me on my left and on my right. And sure enough, I did have a little bit of swelling on the left side, but it went down within less than a day. And the other side effect that I got was like inflamed eyelids, which kind of felt the same as when I had eczema on my eyes that were like really itchy, or similar to it. Like, it had that burning sensation. I think there's a word for it, but it was for sure like an eye inflammation of some kind. It lasted like, I want to say maybe half a day, but it started off really harsh, and then you could kind of feel it die down a little bit. My eyelids were red. My eyeballs themselves were okay, but my eyelids were red. So I have a follow-up appointment with him where I'm getting another Dupixent shot this coming Friday. I could give another updated video with you guys on that, maybe take you guys along with me depending on what you guys want to see. To give you a quick summary, I am on Dupixent. It's been a lifetime of me having eczema, and it progressively spreading from place to place, jumping from the backs of my legs to the inside of my arms to my hands and to all over my body. And then all of a sudden, the worst case was when it was on my face. So I was really thinking of including pictures in this video, but it's just so hard for me to see it. Like, it literally gives me the chills, the like heebie-jeebies of just like knowing where I was at that time. I will see how long I need to be on this. They say that it's a lifetime thing, that once you're on Dupixent, most people stay on in the foreseeable future. And I had a conversation with my dermatologist saying, you know, I do want to have kids in the future, and this is still a relatively new drug. So how does this affect pregnant women? And he essentially said, we'll talk about it once we get there. But I think for at least 1 year, I want to really repair your skin barrier and make sure like it's healed before we try taking you off of Dupixent. I am on board with it right now. We'll see how this adventure keeps going, but an update on how it's been. My first shot, I believe, was about a week and a half ago. And it has like severely calmed down. I think there's a little bit of a filter on this camera. I don't know how to turn it off yet, but like it's pretty much the same. Like it's so soft, very smooth. There's a little bit of like dry patches around here still, but like it is nowhere near where it was a month ago. And that's insane to me. Like my hands used to be so like insanely inflamed. Even the palms, it would be all along this area, a little bit here on like both hands. And like, again, I think you could just see little bits of scarring, but it's healed. Like even here, there's no active eczema. There's probably like little patches, but it doesn't get inflamed. It'll get red. Sometimes I'll still get itchy. Actually, a lot of times, like I'll still get itchy, but it's nowhere near the like satisfying itch that it used to be before I was on Dupixent, because you know that you try not to itch, but when you do itch, it's like this almost like toe curling experience when you do like itch something, but then you immediately regret it afterwards, because then it gets worse and you have to deal with it, wait for it to close, put on the steroid ointments, blah, 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 blah. But these are my hands. Like I have not been wearing any nails recently because I used to love getting my nails done. That's going to be my reward when my nail beds heal. I'm going to let myself get my nails done, and hopefully there's no insane reaction to it, but there hasn't typically been in the past. It's insane. It's insane how much even my body, my back has cleared up a lot. Everywhere where I had it, it's pretty much gone except for save little scarrings. But oh my God, like Dupixent is something that if you have moderate to severe eczema, like in these 2 weeks have been insanely life-changing for me. The differences that I have noticed, when it does get itchy, it's not as bad. It's like a light itch and it doesn't inflame. Of course, I did get the side effects. I don't know if it's just from like the first dose though. Like that's what I'm gonna ask him, if it's gonna be a recurring thing every time I get the shot, like I'm gonna have inflamed eyelids. But I don't know how that's gonna go, but again, I'll talk to him about it and I'll let you guys know what's going on. So this is pretty much my face now, like no makeup, no nothing, and I am very much in love with it. Sometimes there will be little red patches here and there, but that is my update on my eczema journey. I have not been wearing makeup at all, save for maybe like a little bit of lip coloring, but I haven't been putting on any of my usual makeup. So as soon as my skin, I'm probably gonna give it another 2 weeks for it to just kind of like heal out. But as soon as it really calms down, I'll try re-experimenting with certain brands that I have to make sure that I can still use it. And if not, I'm gonna give it all to my younger cousin, because she's like, give me your hand-me-downs. Like, if it's not working for you, just give it to me. So we'll see how that goes. But for now, I'm gonna be rocking pretty much a bare face and enjoying where my skin is at right now. So there's my update. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know what else you guys want to see in the comments, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.